right, this one's a little different. Today we're going to use a foam roller for our stretches. So if you have a 24-inch foam roller or longer, and if you've got just maybe a shorter one, fine, grab your foam roller, anyone you can find, and we're just going to start in a seated posture with cross legs. Take the foam roller in front of you, in front of your feet, and then we're going to roll out the forearms. So leaning forward, bowing in as you roll up towards your elbows, staying off those bony landmarks. So staying off the protruding bones so you don't hurt yourself. Forward fold and roll on your forearms and roll back. And you can flip your arms so that the palms are up and roll the backs of your wrists, the back forearm muscles. And stick with this as long as you'd like. So you don't have to practice along with me here. You can pause the video. I'm just going to break all these stretches down. I want you to take as long as you need to take in these postures, in these stretches. And so I like to kind of go back and forth over the wrist and then to the backs of the arms, maybe even one and the other. So just have some fun here with some movement, crawling forward, crawling back, and maybe even rest for a moment in a seated forward fold. Let your head soften and relax. Another great option here is just to go ahead and pull that foam roller up for the front of your forehead and just rest here for a few moments. Next, we're going to take the foam roller across the upper back. So when you're ready to move on to this stretch, cat-cow, you're going to lengthen as you inhale, open round over the foam roller, which is in your mid-upper back. And you might have to move around to feel this. So you may have to lift your hips and kind of move yourself up and down that foam roller to feel the spot where when you do extend, it doesn't hurt your low back. And so everybody's different. Find the spot for you that does not pinch your low back. And then as you inhale, open your chest. And as you exhale, round and hug in. If you're on a higher part of your back and you feel like the foam roller is going to kick out from behind you, take your elbows and push it into the back of the foam roller. So when you exhale and round, it's not going to kick out behind you. And then you can inhale, open your chest, and exhale, use your arms as resistance to press into the foam roller. When you exhale, pull yourself back up into a rounding position, firing up the core here, at the same time opening the spine and massaging the spinal muscles. And the spinal column is lengthening. You can stretch your arms above head and stay here for a few moments. And continue with your cat-cow, or find one place to stay in for just the next few rounds of breath. And when you're ready, we can come up out of this and move on to the next setup. This next setup, you've got the foam roller up and down the length of your spine. I've got a block under my hips. So if I had a longer foam roller, that'd be great. And this is what I've got. So I've got the block under my hips. If it's okay for your hips to be on the floor, that's fine, as long as it doesn't hurt your low back. The foam roller is right in the middle of my spine, and I'm going to take my arms up to the ceiling. And then move your arms around as it feels. Good. Stretch them above head, stretch them out and around. I'm going to actually scooch up now onto the foam roller with my entire pelvis so that my sit bones are just kind of softening around the foam roller. And then I'm going to situate the block up under my head. So a couple different setups here for you to play with. Because what I want to work on here then is some core and some balancing. Knees can come into the chest, or legs can go up to the ceiling. Open your arms out wide and put your fingers on the floor. You can add in an extra little curl up, and you can even add in some extra challenge by lifting your hands. One leg can stretch out, and bicycle your legs here if you want. So these are all just some fun little ideas to play with on the foam roller. Again, you don't have to go right along with me. Take this at your own pace and do the ones that feel good for you. And then coming back down, hug your knees into your chest, feet on the floor. And then I'm going to move into a back bend here. So I'm going to take my hips down towards the floor here, and then let that foam roller come into the place that doesn't hurt. So I'm going to come down pretty far. So if that foam roller digs too much into your low back, scooch down even more. If this is too intense of a back bend, maybe even put a blanket or something under your hips to give a little bit more of a stair step instead of that huge drop. Head is resting on the foam roller here, and you can reach up and grab opposite elbows and open your chest here. Feet are as wide as your mat. Your knees are just up to the ceiling or resting in toward each other. And then you can switch the crossing of your arms here if you've got the arms hooked. You can even take this into a bound angle if that feels good. So if your bound angle, for me, I felt like I was rocking side to side because one leg is kind of more open than the other. And so the legs kind of teeter-totter. And if that's the case, then you can take your hands down to the floor here and use your fingertips on the floor for balance. And it's a really great hip opener combo back bend here. The foam roller just gives you a great connection to that core strength and balance. It really builds the awareness and that wobbliness of your core when you're not on solid ground. All right, and then we'll move on to the next stretch when you're ready. You can come up to seated and take the foam roller to your right, and then we're going to lean out to the right. So your right forearm is going to roll on the foam roller as your left arm stretches up overhead. And then when you inhale, come back up to seated, and exhale, roll out over the right forearm again, and left arm overhead. I'm going to switch this up a little bit. You can stick with this or change it up yourself. Left arm's going to stay stretching away from my left ear as I roll out over my right forearm. And then inhale, pull it back up and roll on the forearm. And exhale, roll out one more time to the right and stretch the left hand away from your left ear as your left ear pulls away from your left hand. And then inhale back up to seated, and we can switch sides with the foam roller and take it over to your left side now. Left arm's going to roll out twice with the right arm coming up overhead, and then twice with your arm stretching out away from you. So if you used the arm overhead on the last side or a different arm variation, take that same side, take that same variation on this side. Or, if you need to mix it up a little bit to suit your needs on each side, that's fine. Doesn't have to be identical. And again, exhale as you stretch out to the side, open your ribs, and then inhale as you pull back up. Then I'm going to switch it up here and stretch out my right hand, lean out over my left side. So rolling on the roller, massaging the forearms as I do, pulling that ear away from the right hand and pressing the right hand away from the right ear. And then one more time, exhale, stretch, and inhale, pull back up through seated, right into center. All right, and then we're going to take that off to the right side again, and we're going to take this into a side bend, lat stretch. So I'm going to start with the foam roller up in the top area of my ribs, right below my armpit, and my right knee is bent, and my left leg is out straight on the floor. And I'm just going to stretch out over the foam roller there with my right side, supported by the foam roller. And then switching this up just a little bit more, I'm going to start to roll a little bit side to side. So I'm going to use my legs on the floor to help kind of move myself around front to back, side to side, up and down that foam roller. And just feel it. Feel where you need it. I'm going to take my right hand behind my head and kind of crunch in and then open. And that's going to create a little rolling action for me. Crunch in and also core work and open. And crunch in and open. And then I'm going to lay out over this foam roller, stretch both arms overhead. Move the foam roller if you need, or move your body over the roller if it doesn't feel like it's in the right position. If something's hurting or if you can't breathe, definitely move it. But letting the left side of your body stretch long. Maybe even looking up to the ceiling for an extra little opening. And then come up to seated, pushing the floor away. And we'll switch sides. So take the roller off to your left. And again, we'll start with the lat stretch, placing it right under your armpit muscles. And you can use your elbow on the floor. You can hold your head. You can stretch both arms overhead here and just take a nice easy stretch. And then again, you're going to use that right leg when it's time for you to start to move. So both legs even, you can start to kind of roll around on that left side, and only an inch or two. It doesn't have to be a huge, giant surface area that you're rolling over. Notice if this side feels different, if it's tighter. And then again, we can start in those crunches, crunching. You can use your left arm on the floor for these crunches, or you can add in the left arm holding the head again. So something that gets your core to move in addition to this rolling up and down those lats. Inhale as you open, exhale, crunch in. Inhale, open, exhale, crunch in. And use your legs to push away and pull back in on the crunch. And then again, we're just going to start to slide out over that side bend, pull that left knee up, stretch your right leg long, and let your right arm open overhead, maybe even taking your gaze up to the ceiling and opening your right ribs up. And stay there for just a few moments as it feels good. Enjoying the stretch. Enjoying the breathing, moving in and out of your body. Push the floor away to come up to seated, and we'll move on. Okay, so for the next set up, you're going to take the foam roller behind you with your palms facing down and roll on your wrists. Be careful with your shoulders here. You've got to use your core here so you don't fall all the way back and destroy your shoulders, right? So just rolling up and down the forearms, not getting to the elbow. You can add in the legs when you're ready for some core work. So the next time I'm going to go back here, or the next time after that, I'm going to go back and lift the legs up. There we go. And then lower down and inhale. And then roll back and lift those legs. Lower down, inhale. And you can then come up to seated on the foam roller. So you can take that as long as you'd like. If you want some more core work, have some fun with it. Again, this is just a demonstration to show you a bunch of different ideas and ways that you can mix and match some foam roller stuff. I'm moving here into Marichyasana A. So I'm sitting on the foam roller. I'm just kind of finding the sweet spot here. So I'm sitting back a little bit so that I can actually open my chest, and I'm rolling forward and backward on that on the left hamstring. So my right foot is flat on the floor. And I'm finding that place in the middle of my hamstring here. And this can be like a teeter-totter, so be careful you don't fall back on your sit bone and bruise your tailbone there. But I'm using my left foot like it's on a gas pedal to go back and forth to roll on the back of that left hamstring. And then forward fold, Marichyasana A. Right, and then I'm going to switch sides. Left knee is bent, right leg straight. And again, I'm going to come down inside my left leg, wrap around, and find that sweet spot on the back of my right hamstring. So if I'm going to move back or forward a little bit, the more I roll towards the distal end of the femur, so the more I roll back on that foam roller, I can feel it in the middle of the hamstring a little bit more. So use your right leg as the lever here to kind of roll, inch by inch. It doesn't have to be, like I said, a huge surface area that you're covering. Left heel might get in the way, so you may have to scooch that left foot forward. And for me, I'm hitting my heel with the foam roller when I'm pedaling my right foot. So sometimes it takes some manipulating here to get the proportions set up just right. There we go. And this is also helping to lengthen your back. And so if you feel like your sit bone's round under and your tailbone rounds under, when you take forward folds, this will really help to get the hips to anteriorly tilt. All right, Marichyasana A, and then release that bind and come up. Now I'm going to come to sitting forward again on the foam roller. So I'm not quite on the tailbone here. The front of my sit bones are on the foam roller. I'm going to pull my heels in as close to the foam roller as I can get them. This is set up for Paschasana Noose pose. And so I'm going to hook my left elbow and start to twist. I'm pressing down into the foam roller with my right hand and pulling my chest through and open. Squeezing your knees together, squeezing your ankles together. If you can keep your heels on the floor. If not, you can lift them. And then switch sides, inhale, release, and then go off to the left. Right elbow hooks to the left thigh. And again, my left hand is pushing down into the foam roller on the left side. Then opening through for Paschasana. And then coming out of that, inhale, release. All right. So from here, I'm going to cross my right ankle over my left thigh for this number 4 shape, and I'm going to start to turn to the right. So you just kind of have to move around slowly. Don't make any sudden movements on this, so you'll go flying. And I'm going to roll around on the outer left hip. This is fine here to stay for this number 4 shape. If you can take half lotus, you're welcome to start to pull your right heel up into your left hip crease and situate the half lotus. We're going to move into another Marichyasana. So it's Marichyasana B setup. And then roll around that right thigh, that right hip. Use your hands on the floor for balance and the foam roller to help. Your left foot is pointing at an angle, and your knee is pointing left knee in the same direction as your second left toe. And then I'm going to roll around even more. I'm going to turn so that I can start to line my thigh bone up parallel with the foam roller. And the foam roller is kind of more on the inside of my right hamstrings. And then my left foot walks over, but not too close. If the left foot's too close, the forward fold is going to be really challenging. So I could even take that left foot out a little farther. My knee is not on that foam roller. She's kind of sliding off at an angle. And then I'm just going to forward fold down towards the foam roller. My arms are in front of my legs. I'm just pressing back into my left shin with my left arm. Marichyasana B set up. Right? And then just slowly coming out of that, heel toe your left foot out of the way so you can take your right leg out of half lotus. And then come back over to seated. And we'll set up for the second side. in here, just kind of sit for a moment if you'd like. And then I'm going to move into that twist and see if there's any space left. So the left arm's going to hook the right thigh. And I'm actually going to take my left arm down, my left hand down to the foam roller, which is a little bit, I got a little deeper there. I can actually reach here. You could easily take the right hand behind and bind if it's easy for you. If it's not easily binding, then don't do it. Just keep your right hand on that bolster or on the foam roller. All right, inhale, come out of that. And then here we're going to situate for the second side. So I'm going to lean back into my hands and I'm going to cross my left ankle over right thigh and start the number 4 movement. I'm just going to turn over, rolling the hips over, rotating slightly over to the outer left hip. So I can roll up and down. And again, you're not on the outer hip bone, so this shouldn't be hurting, this shouldn't be pinching or tingling, not on any bony processes here. And again, if you can take your heel up into that half lotus shape, you can start to use your right hand to ease the foot up into your left foot up into your right hip crease. Make sure that your right knee is not collapsing in. Your right toes are turning out slightly and your knee is pointing the right knee in the same direction as your right toes. And just rolling around on the hip where it feels good. It doesn't have to be in any specific place. The foam roller is pretty big. It's going to hit a lot of different places. So just rolling around and releasing any tension that you can. Here's a better view from the side. You can see I'm rolling around side to side, and then I'm eventually going to work my way to parallel with the foam roller with my left thigh. So I'm just going to spin on that left hip. So now my knee and the end of the foam roller are lined up. I'm going to start to take the right foot over a little bit. Right foot is flat on the floor. And then I'm going to start to hug down. So you can see that left knee is hanging off that foam roller. I'm going to forward fold down into this setup for Marichyasana B. Hands are on the floor. You can try to bind here if you want. Just be careful with being on this foam roller that you don't fall off of it. So I'm taking my right hand around my right knee and hooking my hand over to my back. Left hand stays on the floor. And when you're ready, you can start to come back up to a seated position. Be careful in the transition, especially coming up out of that and taking your left foot out of half lotus. And then turn around and face forward again, sitting back on that foam roller so we can take the twist on the other side. So Paschasana on your left side now, right elbow hooks, right arm hooks. Maybe your right hand comes down and pushes into the foam roller on the left side. And then here again, maybe your left hand can come around and take a half bind. Eventually you would bind around both legs with your arms. It's pretty challenging. So I'm just going to stick here with using the foam roller as a tool so I can get my spine a little bit more open. And I'm trying to get more on the other side of my left thigh with my right ribs rather than leaning over. I'm trying to lengthen and actually twist instead of forward folding or side bending. All right, and then you can come out of that with an inhale. And I'm going to come back to seated behind the foam roller. I'm going to cross my legs, just kind of stretch out here. You can keep your legs crossed or uncrossed. So some folks find the leg crossing is a little bit easier. It takes it out of one of the hamstrings. If you're crossing a leg, take equal amounts of time in the leg crossing. So if you've got right ankle over left, fold for a few moments, and then come up and cross the other ankle. Here I'm going to come back a little farther on this foam roller. So I'm going to lift myself up and roll over to the back of my hamstrings. And I'm using my hands on the floor here for balance. And then again, I'm using my feet like little pedals back and forth. You could bend your knees if that feels better. But for me, when I bend my knees, I lose my back length. And that doesn't mean flattening your back. So lengthen, not flatten. I'm going to roll back and forth now with my legs lifted. This is more thigh strength. So if you want to get those quads involved in the game, lift your heels off the floor and try to roll forward and back. And here's where it's easier if you cross your ankles because you can lift your legs a little easier this way. Yep, and do both sides. All right, after playing with that, again, go at your own pace here. Pause the video, maybe just watch this through and then go back and do what ones look good to you. I'm going to move into a little upward facing dog shape with this foam roller. So I'm taking the heels of my hands in and my pinky and my fingers actually wrap around to the ends of the bolster, pulling my elbows back in towards my waist. And then I'm pulling my chest and my belly button, my hips over the bolster, pushing toes back, lifting thighs, engage your thighs, engage your glutes. Give that a go for a breath or two and then let it go. And then another variation here is with your fingers wrapping around the front of the foam roller so that your hands are facing down like a normal downward facing dog. And then lift your hips, lift your chest. And then hips come towards the foam roller as much as you can get them there. All right. Have fun with that. Next is pigeon, Ekapada Kapotasana. I've stepped my right foot in front of the bolster, or the foam roller, and I'm now going to sit on the foam roller with my right sit bone on the front of my left hip crease. The right heel is butting up right to the front roll of the foam roller. Left leg is extended. There's a little heart opener for you. You can stay upright for a back bend, or you can start to take your hands down to the floor and then start to walk back. I'm going to prepare for Janu Sirsasana B, where I start to tuck my toes under. So the right foot, right now, the ankle is flexed and I'm rolling back so the foot comes up a little higher. But I'm then going to take my hands and help. I'm going to actually turn my right toes under. So my heel is up. So the shin is rotating down towards the floor and the right knee is pointing out towards the floor. So this is a really good setup for one of the Janu Sirsasana, the head of the knees poses. Head of the knee pose, where it's a variation of that where you forward fold with your toes tucked under. Go and play with it, situate it. If this hurts your ankle or knee, don't do it. Back knee can be lifted or it can be lowering down to the floor. And then lift your heart, fingertips on the floor. And don't stay here any longer than it feels good. I'm going to come out of that, and then I'm going to start to, again, take another little back bend just to get out of that. My foot is still tucked under. My toes are still tucked under. All right, I'm going to take hands back to the floor. I'm going to get out of that foot tucking. So I'm going to come back into a normal setup for Ekapada, except I'm going to roll back to my mid-thigh on that foam roller. So my foot is staying up. Now my knee is not collapsing. In fact, I have to kind of lift up and resituate and make sure that my knee does not collapse. And just a few movements here. You can roll in and out of this, getting just into a different area of the fascia on your right leg. When you roll forward, just watch out for your heel. You can roll over your foot there. You've got to take the foot with you. And then I'm going to come off of the foam roller with my right hip towards the floor. So this foam roller is going to go inside my left thigh actually. And I've got my knees bent. So this is a little bit of a modified pigeon. Your right elbow to the floor here, and you can stretch your arm overhead, left arm, or you can just keep it where it is. Another fun variation of this is with the right leg straight and then forward folding down towards the floor out at an angle. So you can forward fold out over the line of your right leg, or you can forward fold more down the line of that foam roller. So you could take your hands over the left a little bit, press out through your right heel, bend the right knee if you need to, or put something under your right knee. I was just kind of trying to mime there, like put an extra block under there or a blanket if you feel like the right knee is hyperextending. Come to your elbows, and I'm out at a slight angle. I want to go somewhere like where my hips are pointing, so you can see my hips and shoulders are both pointing in the same direction. And that's where you want to fold down that line. Right, and then when you're ready to come up out of that, turn back into this pigeon shape. So pull your right foot back in, turn to face back over the front end of your mat, and then we're going to take this back into the pigeon, but for a quad stretch. So you may have to resituate yourself on that foam roller to get your left thigh not on the knee, but not so much up in the hip crease. And then I'm just going to really go, I'm just ease slow movement. So tiny little inch here and there that I'm covering with this foam roller. And then you can crawl back and take the foam roller up a little higher. So you're inching your way up to the middle part of the hamstring, which is typically the tightest and most sensitive. I'm also struggling here to keep my back foot from kicking in or turning out. So I really don't want to roll to the outer or the inner thigh. I want to keep it more in the middle. So you've got to play with your torso and the right knee and your left hand with those two pressure points. Where's your torso rotating to keep your left thigh from rolling open or in too much? And then you can let go of that. And then I'm going to get into that quad a little bit more by taking my right foot to the floor for a lizard lunge. And then I'm going to roll over the front of the thigh a little bit more. Eventually, I'm going to turn this into an IT band stretch. And to do that, as I'm moving, I'm just going to kind of turn my right toes out to the side. And then see, I'm going into the outside of the edge of my left foot. So now I'm rolling a little bit more into the outer IT band tract, iliotibial tract. I mean, using a foam roller on your iliotibial tract really doesn't do anything other than smash it out, like flatten it out. So using a ball here is actually a little bit more beneficial. All right, I'm going to take this back. Right foot is going to come back over my left foot and to put that left hand under my shoulder a little bit more. But I'm going to take this into a bit of a side plank. So here you can even just sit on this foam roller and open for a moment and then take that front leg back over on top. Lift your hips up and spin right over into downward facing dog. Stay here for a few moments. Child's pose if you'd like. And then we can set up for the second side. So I'm taking a child's pose, kneeling on the foam roller. And then the left foot's going to come through for one leg king pigeon. Again, you start with that foot up with the foam roller here. Hey, it rolls away from you sometimes. And then I'm going to start in the back bend. So I'm actually sitting on this foam roller, but I'm pressing the front of my right hip towards the roller and squeezing the roller with the back of my left hip. And lift the chest open, lift nice and tall. Open your heart, push into that left shin, and then your hands come down to the floor so that you can situate yourself again back a little farther and eventually set up for that toe tuck. So now I'm turning my heel up. You can see a little bit better on this side. I'm actually turning that heel up with my right hand. The left toe is coming to the floor, the left knee out and down towards the floor. And take that bolster up into the heel so the heel's not pushing the bolster back on a diagonal line. Working into this Janu Sirsasana B. You can lift your right knee or you can keep it down. And one side's going to be different. And then when you're ready from here, you can come up to an upright position. Keep the toes tucked under for a little bit of a back bend. So repeating everything we did on the first side, on this side. And then take that foot out to the floor and roll back a little bit more into a foot behind the head prep. So now the bolster or the foam roller is holding the left knee up and you've got a little bit more height in that left hip so you're not collapsing down. So your hips are staying level here. And the shin is coming more parallel to the mat. All right, you can crawl back forward. And then again, we're just going to kind of scooch you to scooch. You got to replace it. Oh, here I'm just going to show you another option here where you can take the foam roller over a little bit and your heels kind of on the end of that foam roller instead. So this is another option if you want to go back and play with this on that first side. All right, so situate yourself back into a pigeon position where you can come up into your back bend, open your heart, and you've got the heel on the end of that foam roller, so it makes it a little bit easier to push your right hip forward. I'm just going to move it back to the original position that I had it in and take one more bit of an opening here with that left shin, outer left foot on the floor. So you can play with a lot of different variations here in pigeon. Hands up, hands down, knee up, knee up. Where's the bolster or the foam roller positioned? I should just start calling it a bolster. All right, so I'm going to move into the side leaning position. It's a little bit of a modified pigeon shape. Left elbow's on the floor, and the foam roller's on the inside of my right thigh, and I've got my left knee bent, so I'm a little bit more open here, so it's not so challenging on the hip. Then if you want, you can take this out into that left leg straight. Now again, the roller is coming inside my right thigh, my left foot. It's going to situate into something like a wide angle position. And that right foot is kicked out like half frog. Forward folding down in the line of my hips, so my hips and my shoulders stay pretty much in the same line. If you want to forward fold out over towards the left foot a little bit more, you can kind of kick the right hip in a little bit more. So you turn your hips if you want to turn your torso. Okay, so shoulders and hips line up. Hands can be on the floor, elbows can be on the floor. You can use extra blocks here if you've got them handy. And take as long as you need here. Get that nice inner left thigh stretch. That should be a great little stretch for the inner adductors. And I'm going to come around, pull the left heel back in, and situate myself back into a front-facing position over the foam roller and get into the quads here. So here again, I'm going to take my left hand back to my right foot. I'm going to inch my way up the thigh. So I'm starting down at the distal end of the femur and working my way up slowly but surely. You can kind of crawl on your legs, use your right hand and your left knee as a lever. Again, I'm trying to keep that foot, my right foot, from rolling in. I'm going to scooch back a little bit now so I can get up to the top of the thigh a little bit more. And try to watch out for that heel and the hip getting in the way. If your pants are slippery, you're going to slide around on the foam roller, so be careful of that. Sometimes it's nice to have some pants on that have some bite. So if they're not super slippery, it'd be better. All right, and then I want to get a little deeper into the top end of that thigh. So I'm going to take my left leg out now in a wide lizard lunge and situate the foam roller so that I can slide up and down the length of my femur, getting up a little higher into that hip crease, or towards the hip crease, not necessarily on the hip crease, but right up in that area. And you can bend the knee to do that if that helps. It does make it a little bit more intense. All right, I'm going to turn to the outside of my right foot, and again, I'm going to heel toe that left foot over, so I'm eventually facing the left side of the room, getting into this iliotibial smash here just for a moment. And then if you want to lift your foot, the back foot kind of help, the bottom leg kind of helps if you lift it. Okay, and then I'm going to situate my right hand under my right shoulder, stretch out overhead, nice little opening here. A little bit of a twisted lunge, and then that left leg comes back on top of the right, and I'm going to push up, inhale, and then twist right over into downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana, exhale. Again, take as long as you like here or in a child's pose position. All right, and then I'm going to come down to hands and knees, and then move the bolster up under the armpits, under the chest for Anahatasana. So your forehead can be on the floor or a blanket, and the top chest is just resting right over the curve, over the round of the foam roller / bolster, because that's what I keep calling it. All right. And then I'm going to take this into a little bit of an up dog work. So I'm going to continue to roll out those thighs. Now I've got both thighs on the bolster. Hands are on the floor now. This is really helpful for learning alignment in upward facing dog, where your shoulders need to be over your wrists. So you can see your shoulders go way over those wrists. Be really careful with this. If this is painful in your low back, this is not necessary. You can skip it. Or if it's painful in your wrists. I'm going to bend my knees and work towards King, the Great King Pigeon. All right. King Cobra is what they call it, King Cobra. All right, and then I come up off that. And then one last little stretch here. I want to get into the quads. I'm actually going to situate my feet on the foam roller so my toes are over the foam roller. My ankles are not on the roller. And then my hands are going to come back to the foam roller, press hips up. It's something like camel pose meets Kapotasana, King Pigeon pose, that big back bend meets hero pose, right? So it's kind of like a mashup, pose mashup. Taking it a step deeper, hands come down onto the floor, maybe elbows to the floor. Be careful here. You're pressing your hips up and maybe your head to the floor. Now this is moving into that Laghu Vajrasana. Hands can come to hips or to your calves or to the foam roller, or even just rest them out to the side, but breathe and try not to tense up in the front of your hips here. It's going to hurt your low back later if you're tensing up in the front of the hips. When it's time to come out of it, you're going to take your hands back to the floor or the foam roller and push yourself up. It feels sometimes like you can't get out of that. That's kind of why I was chuckling there. I'm going to crawl back over the foam roller now and just kind of sit back here. Flip the foam roller up on its end so you can just kind of rest on hands and knees, or hands on your knees and then forehead on the bolster, on the foam roller. And then I'm going to add on to this, widen your stance as you come up to standing, widen your feet apart and take your hands onto the end of the foam roller. I'm going to actually I'm going to take it closer to me, hook my hands, interlace my fingers and hook my palms over the end of the foam roller, and then pull my elbows in and round my back out. Bending your knees might give you more of a back stretch. This is a great upper back stretch. And if you need to walk closer into the foam roller, walk your feet forward a little bit more. There we go. Now I feel that nice little upper back stretch. I'm actually going to take my hands down to the foam roller and pull the end of the foam roller up my back. And eventually I'm going to walk my head down. And so this foam roller is acting like a wall. And in fact, if you're close to a wall, put it up against a wall and then do this against the foam roller at the wall. And it'll keep that foam roller in place. What I'm doing here is offering a little bit more core work. So it's a massive core work for me to push into my back and pull back with my hands and not knock the foam roller over. All right, you can come down to seated and just take a break. We're going to get into Shavasana. So if you got anything you want to work on, any stretches, here's one of my favorite ways to take Shavasana is the foam roller, or if you have a blanket or a bolster, put it under the backs of your knees and let your arms relax. One of my other top favorites is to rest in bound angle. So what I'm going to do is pull that foam roller up a little higher and take my feet together and let the foam roller support my knees in a supine bound angle. So I hope this gave you some good ideas on how to work with a foam roller, and you can incorporate it in any of the yoga postures, any of the yoga practices. It doesn't have to be in just a strictly foam roller practice. These are just suggestions and ideas for you to work at home for recovering your body. Have fun with it, guys.